Welcome to Fearless and Focused, where we dive into the raw stories of entrepreneurship. I'm Nicole, and I'm here with my co-host, Helia.
Hello, everyone.
We're both entrepreneurs, and in each episode, we will break down different aspects of the entrepreneurial journey: teamwork, funding, growth, failures, and everything in between. Plus, we'll bring in amazing women entrepreneurs to share their experiences.
But before we get to all that, I want to start with my own story, how I got into entrepreneurship and the lessons I've learned and what keeps me going. So let's dive in.
I'm very excited to learn more about your story. So let's get into the beginning. Entrepreneurship was always in you, huh? Tell us more about that.
So I never had to ask myself, am I an entrepreneur? Because I just was. And since childhood, I've always found ways to monetize something. If I could sell a painting, I would just make sure that it's in the right hand. Or if I could write an essay for a classmate, I'd make sure it was worth something. But it wasn't just about making money for me. It was more about creating a structure or solving a problem and understanding how things work. So when it was time to choose a major, I went for economics, not because I had a master plan, but because I liked the subjects like psychology, management, strategy, economics, and stuff like that. But deep down, I knew I wasn't going to be a professor or a researcher because I wanted to be in the business world and I wanted to create something. That's why I didn't continue with the master's in economics, and that's why I started working as a junior project manager for my first corporate job at a startup. I didn't have a clear career goal. I just wanted to expose myself to everything. I was everywhere, working with every department, with the content teams, with the tech teams, with the finance teams, with managers. And that's when I realized something important about myself. I just wasn't good at the job. I was good at seeing the big picture. And that's where I understood that I'm a generalist. And I think I don't specialize in one field. I try to connect all the different moving parts. And in a fast paced business world, I think that's the strength. And even though I loved working in a startups, something was missing and I wasn't building anything of my own. So I needed to create something. And that's where I took the leap.
There's a lot to unpack. I have tons of questions. So let's go back to you being in school. So let's talk more about your college experience. And you talked about you chose economics, which is incredible. Oh my goodness. Economics was macro and microeconomics were the worst classes. I hated them. So for you to get a whole degree in them, I applaud you. Let's talk about where you were in life, physically, mentally, emotionally, all those things when you went into college and you said, this was going to be my major. It's going to set me on a career path.
So I got accepted into two different majors for my undergrad. One of them was economics and the other one was mechanical engineering
Oh, wow.
because I was very good at mathematics. And my family kind of pushed me to go and study mechanical engineering because we're Persians and we have to be either engineers, lawyers, or doctors. But I just knew that it's not me. I wasn't an engineer type of person. I like social sciences more. And I really wanted to study psychology, but because of my family, I didn't. And I really had that talent in mathematics. That's why I chose economics over mechanical engineering, because you really need to be good at mathematics to understand the models and concepts of it. And I think that it set a very good foundation for me to realize how a business works, what are financial models, how everything in a bigger concept functions. So I really appreciate that experience.
So when you started undergrad, you go into it knowing I'm going to do economics because I know eventually I'm going to have my own company. Or did something happen? Was there a switch? Or was it like, I'm pretty focused and pretty clear on my goal here?
I didn't study economics because I had a plan. I just studied economics because I liked the subject, but I knew that I'm going to do something ultimately. I'm going to build something for my own. And right after I finished my undergrad, I went and I started working in a corporate job at a startup. And then it just like continued, and I started working in different marketing agencies as a project manager while also freelancing, a role that I still maintain to this day. And during that time, while working full time, I partnered with a friend who is a fashion designer, and we worked together and we decided to build something out of our own. And after a lot of brainstorming, we landed on vegan leather bags.
Has beautiful bags, actually. I love your brand. So you got your degree and you are friends with this girl, super into fashion. And so how did you guys stumble upon bags? How was vegan leather bags the go-to? How'd you get there?
Thinking about my background in marketing and tech and startups, it would make more sense if I started a tech kind of business. But I wanted a challenge. I wanted to step out of my network and comfort zone and try something different. And just making bags was a challenge for me because in that time in Iran, there were not a lot of domestic bag brands that create or produce high quality vegan leather bags. And I saw an opportunity there and I just jumped into it.
When you first started with the bags, what do you feel like the most challenging aspect was? You say you like challenges, so what was most challenging?
I think the most challenging thing for me is that there is no guidebook on how to start a bag brand. It's a very old school traditional industry, and you really need to figure out everything from scratch. And we didn't know anything about bag industry, like nothing. And that's why we started doing a lot of research. We went to different stores, we talked to a lot of manufacturers, we learned about the supply chain, and we started testing. We tested different materials, we tested different manufacturers, and at the same time we were working on building a brand identity. I wanted to be with a good structure and foundation from the beginning. So we spent about 6 months figuring out what we need to do until we've made our first collection.
Go a little bit deeper into your brand. So what's your brand name?
So my brand name is called Hekata. And it's actually interesting because when I met my co-founder, she was like, I didn't know her. I met her on a trip, a camping trip, and she was recently graduated from university. And she said that I'm looking forward to start a business. And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. I want to start a business. And we had that thing in common and just we started brainstorming on that same trip that what kind of a brand should we have. And she said that I've already thought about the name. Can it be Hecate? And I was like, it's so cool. I'm okay with it. So we had a name even before we know what we want to produce. So it was very spontaneous, on the moment kind of decision.
Looking back, I wasn't sure if you regret the decision at all because your bags are beautiful. You guys seem very successful. And I'm glad that you continued on. I love my little wallet. My card case that you gave me over the summer, I wear during the summer is my favorite thing. So obviously have gained some success. So where did you guys go from there?
So we launched our first collection back in 2018. And in less than 2 weeks, we completely sold out. And
That's some good marketing.
it's just like a lot of the sales came from our friends and family, but it was still validated and motivated us at the same time. And it proved that there was a demand for our products. So we started thinking about what are the next steps. How can we turn this into a sustainable business? Because that was what my passion was, building a business. And that's where I started stepping up and structure everything. We needed to find the right manufacturers to improve our product quality. We need to expand the sales channels, collaborating with other brands, or we needed to do a lot of marketing, like Instagram ads, like online and offline events, like content creation. And just when we started scaling, the COVID happened. That COVID, and it nearly destroyed us. Manufacturing was shut down, sales slowed, we didn't have any products to sell, and everything was very uncertain. And we had only two choices, either shut down the business or push through. And for a business that small at that early stage, surviving a pandemic is just huge and impossible.
It was a tough feat for a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't make it, but you guys made it. So I'm assuming you guys pushed through. And I want to take a step back though, because you talked about how you got to where you are. You were able to sell out, you were able to manufacture, you got to where you were, where you began to scale the company before COVID hit. I want to touch on the financial piece of that. Building something from the ground up, bootstrapping something is tremendously hard. Having a consumer product can make it a little bit harder based on manufacturing regulations, requirements, minimums, all those things, right? How did you guys figure out where was the minimum that you guys can start in order to start making money to even get to the scaling part?
That's a very good question, actually. And we both had some personal savings that put in the business first, and we completely bootstrapped the business. And then we had to do a second and third round of investing later on. But the deal with me and my co founder was that we didn't touch the money for almost a year. We just spend the money for the business itself to grow. And that's a huge commitment. Just like working for free for something that you hope that has a return on investment in the future. And that's actually what helped us to move on and continue producing. But getting back to my background in startups world and in a startup world and the marketing and tech and stuff like that, it would have made much more sense if I just go with a tech startup. But actually, for few reasons, I think that it's not a very viable option for me. First of all, I think that I was very biased. So I think I wouldn't have made right decisions.
Can you lean into that a little bit more? What do you mean?
I really need to give some context about the startup in ecosystem in Iran in that time. It was crazy. There was like trends for starting a tech startup, and there were growing every day the number of the startups. There were a lot of incubators, accelerators, and different events, and just like a lot of people were investing in the startup ecosystem. And I think most of them were doomed and they failed because it was not sustainable. It was just a wave that people were surfing on, and it was not sustainable and long lasting.
Mhm.
So I think I made the right decision there to step out of my comfort zone and my network to jump into a more traditional kind of business, because at the same time, the tech foundation in Iran is not very reliable. So I just didn't want to spend tons of money on something that is very uncertain. And also the fact that starting a tech startup needed much more initial funding, and we didn't have that resources back then.
All right. So let's get back to COVID. COVID happened, and you guys are in a fork in the road, shut down or pushed through. So how did you get through? How did you overcome that challenge?
So from the very beginning, I was very concerned of building the right foundation for this business, that it would just scale strategically. So even with the COVID, we just tried to adapt our operations. We all worked from home. Even our manufacturer, it was a lady back then that had this small operations at her house. And we just kept going like that because it was a very small business at the beginning. Still is a small business, but at the beginning it was just the three of us. And we really focused on online markets and online marketing. And our main sales funnel is still our Instagram page. And then we try to just adapt and be flexible. And I could see that after COVID, the world is not going back to where it was, and everything was more online and remote. So I just went with the flow and set the structure right.
So how long after COVID you pivoted, you figured it out? You're a small company anyway. You had obviously a close enough relationship with your manufacturer to say, how can we adjust for all of us to continue on because I'm sure it wouldn't have been ideal for your manufacturer to shut down all the way either. So it's like a win-win when you are able to come together with your suppliers and everybody on the same page, especially in something that's unprecedented as a global pandemic. Nobody knows how to handle that. That's something you only see once in a lifetime. So like, nobody has experience in it. So you guys obviously able to push through. And then after that, you came here. You came to the US. How did you manage that with having your company there? It's still in operation. Came here to go to school, which is where we met. So take us to that point and what were the challenges involved with that transition?
So, yes, just when things were getting more stable, I moved to US and it was another major shift. It was a crazy transition, both on a personal level and on a business aspect. It was a huge challenge for me because how can you run a business that's so hands-on when you're not even physically there? And I've been in charge of production, sourcing, partnerships, marketing, and sales. I had different roles that they all required to be physically available. And even how could I contribute to a business with an 8-hour time difference? Because I couldn't shut down my life in US and just be awake all night to work on a business in another part of the world that is not even having a financial outcome for me. So everything at first felt very blurry. I felt very overwhelmed and I was just like so sad because I thought we need to shut it down.
So what did that conversation look like between you and your partner? And how did you prepare yourself? How did you approach that conversation? How did that conversation go with your business partner?
So we knew that I'll eventually be gonna move out of Iran.
Both of you?
And we had different options, either selling the business. We had different exit plans, right? So either shut it down completely or selling it to someone else or bring it out of Iran somehow. And those three options are still on table, but we just continued. My co-founder just told me that let's move on and see what happens. I really owe it to her because she's someone that I completely trust and I love this teamwork and collaboration that we have together. But another thing that helped us through was the strong foundations. We have built a system where everyone owned their role. I didn't need to be physically there because my manufacturer owned her role and she was taking responsibility and she was very committed. And we had different partnerships with different stores, but I didn't really need to do anything for that because it was happening automatically. So I think that a strong foundation was our key to success. And I'm proud to say that Hekate has had its most growth in the last year and a half since I moved here.
I love that.
It definitely took months to adjust to that change, but now every morning, the first thing I check is Hekate's status. I just talk to different people and check the progress and give guidance if necessary and move on with my day. And again at night, since it's the morning there, I check again everything just to make sure that we're all aligned. And that's it.
One thing I learned to appreciate about that time difference is that you have like 2 work days. So when I was deployed, we had 8 hours. I noticed in the 8-hour time difference. So it's like I had my 8 hours of regular work day there in that country, and then I would have another 6 hours after work when I'm done with this part because now the East Coast in the United States is waking up. And
Exactly.
so I could see how that transition wouldn't be as bad, especially when you have one business partner there and one and you being here, because when one person not working, the other person can be working. So there's continuous progress always being made. Those not the little things we take for granted, like the power of technology to be able to do that, like power to be able to take a company and a brand global.
Yes, but honestly, very first feeling that I had was overwhelmed. Imagine like morning you wake up and you have tons of messages, like people asking you different questions, or you need to take care of things. So, a lot to process, and no one likes to wake up to that in the morning. It's just like stressful. For the first few months, I was just like, couldn't touch my phone in the mornings. Every morning I would wake up and I was like, it's out. But I try to time to myself, and as I said, I'm really appreciated from my co-founder. She really took the hard part here, and she took a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
We made it through.
Because a partnership is like a marriage. And
Exactly.
from the sense of like, at the time, you're going to be putting in your 50, like, you're going to be putting your part of your lane. She's going to be putting in her lane. But sometimes you have to lean more into the other person's lane to help them out and adjusting to a new cadence in a new country, in a new language. You gotta learn English when that in itself is overwhelming. I always commend you on like your success being able to do that. Like I think you're amazing for that. So like you can see those challenges, just being able to adjust and trying to figure out how do I do this? And having that person that's just like, go figure it out. I got you. It is amazing. It's hard to come by. But me not knowing you, I can see why it's so easy to just like to do that for you because you give so much. So to have an opportunity to give back to you is amazing. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. The thing that made us through all of these things that has happened in the past couple of years is that from the very beginning, the clear rules for each other. So my co-founder is more responsible for the creative part of the business. What's the art direction of our gonna be? What's the final packaging gonna look like? What are the details of the product gonna look like? But I was more responsible for the business aspects and like some marketing part of it. And we made this deal from the very beginning that we always collaborate and do everything together, but we would make the final decisions in those areas and she would make the final decisions in those areas. And we had 100% trust in each other, and is like perfect way of having a partnerships. You don't step on each other's shoes. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, setting that foundation is important. But I feel like because you had that experience, you knew what you could do and you knew what you couldn't. And being able to find that yin for your yang is just like, it's an amazing feeling. Like, I understand what you feel. I understand what you're saying. So let's get to some lessons learned from your entrepreneur journey. Give us some top lessons that you used, you've learned, and you implement for yourself now moving forward.
Me, entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's more about self-discovery. I had to learn and understand my strengths and leadership style. I had to learn to make tough decisions fast because if I don't, there is no one else to make those decisions. And I needed to start thinking strategically because execution is everything. And I needed to learn how to be adaptable because that's what I always tell you. Things will always go wrong, and that's the part of the process. And you need to be able to make decisions at the right time and just like change your strategy or shift it to another direction just to make sure that you will survive that. And I think like biggest takeaway for me is that entrepreneurship will change you. It will pushes you to grow and to take risks and redefine what's possible, and it just pushes your boundaries and limits in a way that you didn't thought at the beginning that you're capable of doing all of those things.
So thanks for sharing your story with us. I always tell you you're such an inspiration. I love learning more about you, which is why we started Fearless and Focused, because entrepreneurship can be lonely, overwhelming, and unpredictable, but it doesn't have to be. We wanted to have real, honest conversations, not just about what works, but also what doesn't. Each episode will focus on a key concept: teamwork, funding, branding, scaling, and break it down in a way that's actually useful. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Fearless and Focused.